Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is Wednesday, June 3rd, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me. Title of today's podcast is A Military Response, and the focus is going to be on former Secretary of Defense and Marine Corps General James Mattis, a personal response that he wrote in the Atlantic, summarizing what has been taking place across this country for the past week, with the protests and the riots and the leadership or lack thereof that he has witnessed. Front and center being that of the President of the United States, specifically calling out the United States military to be placed coast to coast, if need be, on city streets in the United States of America. So I think it is fitting with what we have been discussing here over the past few podcasts to show this side of the story. You can, of course, agree with General Mattis. You can strongly agree. You can strongly disagree. But I just want to open up the debate here, as I attempt to do on a daily basis. That's what this podcast is about. I'm going to give you my analysis, my opinions. I'm going to give you articles from various sources that I find valid, trustworthy, reputable. And we can have this ongoing discussion, this ongoing debate back and forth as to what makes sense, identifying problems, talking about solutions. That's what this country is about. That's what this podcast is about. Trying to get people out of their respective silos. That there isn't just a Republican solution or there isn't just a Democratic solution. That there could be 3, 4, 5, 10 dozen possible solutions to the various issues that we encounter. It was a striking response from the general, in my opinion. It was needed. I think it shows leadership. It is a little bit of a removal from norms when most people in the military don't typically come out and get involved with politics. But then again, General Mattis was also a political appointee, and the country is facing historic times. So to voice his opinion is obviously his right. And again, you can agree with whether that is in the proper fashion of somebody of his rank, of his position to come out and do so. But he did. So we're going to discuss that. Market performance, well, it's basically a law that the markets have to go up. And so they did. Today, the Dow Jones closed up above 26,000. The S&P is above 3,100 points. The NASDAQ 100 is above 9600 right now, and futures trading all are down anywhere from about 0.1% to about 0.25%, all in the red. But that's the futures market. We'll see what happens come tomorrow during the cash trade. Japanese cash trade is trading relatively flat, up 0.1%. A big day across the pond in Europe on the hopes, and really it's going to be the reality, of more stimulus coming out of the ECB. Big day across the pond. 3 to 3.5%, depending on the index. UK was up 2.6. Let's round up. Who cares? Australian market cash trade right now is also up 1%, even though yesterday, and we didn't discuss this yesterday, but Australia is pretty much headed for recession the first time in 30 years. Great day to rally. The Australian dollar is also rallying. So, it doesn't matter. Financial Road of Oz. Heads, they win. Tails, you lose. Okay? That's the environment in which we find ourselves. Market valuations at extremes like they were a couple months ago before the massive 40% decline. In some instances, even worse, such as the Buffett indicator, stock market capitalization divided by GDP. even worse, especially once you take into consideration what is likely to happen to GDP over the coming quarters, making that valuation, the Buffett indicator, even more extreme. Your comparisons are 1929 before the crash and the dot-com bubble before it burst. Those are your comparisons. What happened to stocks over the coming years once those bubbles burst? Oh, that's right, 80 to 90% declines. You ready? Get ready. Now, maybe they finally solved the problem. Maybe they've turned a market into a perpetual money-making machine, which now renders it no longer a market. What it would be called is what I just stated: a perpetual money-making machine. Never Neverland. That's where we are. We're in Oz. Are we ever going to go back to any semblance of price discovery? I think we will, and it is going to be devastating because everybody thinks they can't lose. And when you're in that mindset, that's when the market throws an uppercut and catches you off guard. That's why I say here, every day is a send-off, stay diversified and stay vigilant. We're not the ones pulling the levers. We should be. We should be the ones pulling the levers. Like I said yesterday, we are the economy. But no. 12 unelected egghead idiots at the Federal Reserve pull on these levers. And evidently, that's enough. Because they're the crack dealers, and the crackheads on Wall Street just eat it up. They just eat it up. You would have thought by now the patient would have overdosed. Hasn't happened. It's unbelievable. It's sickening. 40 million Americans unemployed over the course of 10 weeks. You have some banks of the Federal Reserve in their various districts. There's 12 districts of the Federal Reserve. Some of them are forecasting GDP for the second quarter to contract by 50%. 50. 50%. Markets continue to rally. The S&P 500, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, on a year-to-date basis, is just slightly down. The NASDAQ is in the green. It's really only a strong rally away, which could be a day or two away from making all-time highs. You got a global pandemic. Again, 40 million Americans filing for unemployment insurance, out of work. A 25, almost $26 trillion national debt. A projected $4 trillion deficit just for this year alone. It will be worse. Protests coast to coast, which is fine if they're peaceful, and today they were very peaceful. But you had a lot of rioting over the past few days, east to west, north to south. And yet you still have that realization within these markets. They're not that efficient. Anybody who's ever studied finance, economics, investing, everything that you've been taught, everything that you've been trained to look at and to understand is out the window with what is going on right now. All of that money, all of that time, all of that energy that you spent studying, trying to figure this stuff out is gone. Because as long as there's a central banker there who's going to print money, that's all you need. What kind of sick society is this? And everybody's grasping for it. Let's go. A whole bunch of people at home now because they can't go outside. Because of the lockdowns, are opening up trading accounts because you can't bet on sports. So now all the degenerates are getting into the stock market. Great. What could possibly go wrong here? A whole bunch of people that have no idea what they're doing, opening up accounts, using Uncle Sam's $600, $1,200, whatever it is, all of it, and just putting it in stocks that they think are cheap because they're simply looking at the price, not understanding the valuation. Maybe it's trading under $10 for a reason. Maybe it's about to go bankrupt. So I say this out of concern for these people, but Like everybody who gets in the markets, you learn your lessons the hard way. I certainly have. Continue to do so. Continue to do so. We are small fish in a very big ocean. You can get thrown around like a rag doll. And you will. But that's how you learn. What I'm just simply trying to do is open up people's minds. Say, pay attention here. Take a step back. Take a deep breath. Do you really know what you're talking about? Do you really know what's going on here? And are you ready for what could happen? Are you even aware of what happened in 1929 and 2000? Because they all thought that time was different too. And now everybody's going to use, well, this time's different now because Jay Powell at the Federal Reserve, the ECB, Bank of Japan, all of them are just printing money. So this time is different. They finally cracked the code. They solved the mystery of the Sphinx. Finally, after thousands and thousands of years, they finally solved it. All they got to do is print money. Well, then we don't need taxes. And why give people $1,200? Because that ain't going to cut it. Give them 120 grand. That'll solve a lot of people's problems. If it's free, right? If they're this idea of a free lunch and that there is no free lunch, well, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Let's see. If it's costless, if it's truly free, then do that. Give everybody 120 grand. Then you'll really see the economy take off according to these idiots. But they know that's not going to happen. And that's just a simple exercise of logic. If 1,200 is good, make it 2,400. Make it 12 grand. Make it 120. Shouldn't more be better? Debts and deficits don't matter. You can just print it. Well, then evidently taxes don't need to be collected. You can just go to a central bank. They'll print it. We're already a banana republic. Let's just admit it openly and go from there. Let's press our luck. Big bucks, no whammy. Let's see how long we can get away with it. That's what we're doing. Well, the markets rallied today, really, I think, on the back of the news from the ADP jobs report. And I don't like talking about the ADP jobs report. And this is one of many reasons why. Huge discrepancies. And of course, we'll get the official jobs report this Friday from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which we might do like we did last month and read the report in its entirety because it's likely to be another historic report. The ADP figures that came out for unemployed for the month of May, according to ADP, a couple million. Projections were closer to 9 million. Now, you see the difference here? Because we've been talking on a weekly basis, like we will do tomorrow, although I might not be here tomorrow, but I will catch up with you on Friday, just as a heads up. But we'll get those numbers out tomorrow, initial jobless claims. Well, we've been tracking them and discussing them for the month of May, and we've had well more than the ADP figure for the month of May. So something's not jiving here. For the month of May alone, I don't have the number in front of me, but it was basically 2 million at least per week. So that's why you have economists and people projecting, oh, it's going to be closer to 9 million for the month of May. They're just simply looking at the initial jobless claims numbers. And ADP comes out and says, oh, no, it's 2, 3 million. Something's not jiving. That's why I don't like focusing on them. They're not the official number. Why they even come out is beyond me. Just ego, something to do between ADP and Moody's. That's it. That's all it is. But it's a headline, and the market's rallied, which makes no sense either, given what we've been focused on over the past 10 weeks, because every time the market got the initial jobless claims number being terrible, worse than expected, markets rallied like there was no tomorrow. Bad news is great news. This, one would think, was good news. But the market still went up. Well, that's basically the law. They have to go up. For a year and a half, or how God only knows how long it was, with all the BS headlines about the China-U.S. trade deal, anytime it said something positive, sounded positive, markets took off. They rallied. Drove me crazy. Still does. Now it's falling apart. Wouldn't you think the markets would sell off? No, why not? Because now Federal Reserve's just going to do everything. Maybe they'll buy soybeans next. They're buying junk bonds. Why won't they buy soybeans? They got to eat. They can't eat the junk bonds. You cannot make this stuff up if you tried. You can't. And it's only June. It's only June. Today, thankfully, from the protesting standpoint, everything was much calmer. Everything was much more peaceful, exactly how it's supposed to be. Moments of silence, people voicing their opinions. That's how it's supposed to be. Exercising their constitutional rights. That's the majority of America. That's the majority of the people who are protesting. It's easy to point the finger and say it's all of them when you have the media focused on people looting. You say, well, that's all of them. It isn't. It isn't. It's the rotten few that ruin the whole barrel. That's how it is everywhere. Just like police. Those police officers who killed George Floyd are the few rotten apples. That's not all of the police in this country. And it's not right to make that analogy to the police or to say, oh, well, it's not the police. No, they're all good. And these guys, But those rioters, that's all of them. It's all the protesters. In fact, they're not protesters, they're rioters, all of them. That's the majority of them. Well, that's not right. And that only goes to fan the flames and to make things worse. And when you want to focus more on dominate, you're going to get people, especially in this country, going to give you the middle finger, probably on both hands. All of these curfews ain't going to happen. 7 o'clock, 8 p.m., not going to happen. We're going to stay out here all night. We're frustrated. We're angry. We're sad. We're scared. We're tired. We're not going home. That's how this is supposed to happen. That's what this country was founded on. You think King George liked the founding fathers? He wanted to put the military on the streets of the United States, didn't he? This country is founded on protest. This country was founded on a revolution. And quite honestly, that's what's needed right now to take this country back, to restore us to our constitutional republic, to remove us from this banana republic insanity that everybody seems to be okay with. Or at least those in power do. Why? Because they're running away with the loot. They're the real rioters. They're the real thieves in the night. But Fox News and CNBC and CNN and MSNBC, they don't turn their cameras on the people at the Capitol and the Federal Reserve and the White House and the Treasury across the political spectrum, across administrations, to focus their lenses on those people, on those institutions who have been robbing this country blind for years, to the tunes of trillions and trillions of dollars. And they're doing so right now, right in front of you, in your face, under your nose, every day. Every day. And again, it's fine to be upset with those people stealing $20 t-shirts off a rack in Target. I'm upset. They should be held to account and prosecuted. But what about these idiots who are stealing trillions? That's what I'm saying. That's why yesterday's podcast, $20 is a crime, 20 trillion ain't. I mean, if that doesn't sum it up, I don't know what does. So some peaceful protests, finally, hopefully, that's how they remain. Commodity prices. WTI trading at $36.57 a barrel. Brent at $39.23. Natural gas, $1.82. Gold and silver pulling back today. Gold at $1,703 an ounce. Silver trading at $17.59 an ounce. A big weekday for Uncle Sam's Treasuries, a lot of selling. 10-year is now yielding 0.74%. So I don't know if this means it's a risk-on event or if people just don't want Uncle Sam's treasuries. Maybe a combination of both, but something to pay attention to. Very much so. So now to the crux of today's podcast, General Mattis' response. I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but a few excerpts here. Again, posted in The Atlantic. And this is in response to the president's remarks the other day of domination and perhaps putting the military on the streets across this country. Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people, does not even pretend to try. Instead, he tries to divide us. We are witnessing the consequences of 3 years of this deliberate effort. We are witnessing the consequences of 3 years without mature leadership. We can unite without him, drawing on the strengths inherent in our civil society. This will not be easy, as the past few days have shown, but we owe it to our fellow citizens, to past generations that bled to defend our promise, and to our children. Now, here's President Trump's response to this, and we'll get back to some more of the general's remarks. Again, here is President Trump's response via Twitter. No surprise. Probably the only thing Barack Obama and I have in common is that we both had the honor of firing Jim Mattis, the world's most overrated general. I asked for his letter of resignation and felt great about it. His nickname was Chaos, which I didn't like, and changed it to Mad Dog. His primary strength was not military, but rather personal public relations. I gave him a new life, things to do, and battles to win. But he seldom brought home the bacon. I didn't like his leadership style or much else about him, and many others agree. Glad he is gone! Exclamation point. The first remarks were from a general of the United States Marine Corps and a former Secretary of Defense. The last quote was from the President of the United States via Twitter. Different types of leadership style. And just for a fact check, General Mattis resigned, not because the president asked for it, but because Jim Mattis disagreed with the decision that the president was making. Jim Mattis was called Mad Dog well before Donald Trump as well. The president can't help himself. He just can't. He just can't. He continues, it is a wholesome and unifying demand, one that all of us should be able to get behind. And of course, this is with the protesters. We must not be distracted by a small number of lawbreakers. The protests are defined by tens of thousands of people of conscience who are insisting that we live up to our values as people, and our values as a nation. Even the general understands it. We must not be distracted by a small number of lawbreakers. Pay attention to the bigger point. Now, of course, he's not going to go off like I do here about the Federal Reserve and all the money looting. It's really the big picture. Stay focused on this issue. Equal justice under the law. These communities want law and order in their communities. They don't want police officers with their feet, with their knees on the neck of a human being for 9 minutes until they're dead. They want law and order too. He continues, when I joined the military some 50 years ago, I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution. Never did I dream that troops taking that same oath would be ordered under any circumstance to violate the constitutional rights of their fellow citizens, much less to provide a bizarre photo op for the elected commander-in-chief, with military leadership standing alongside. Militarizing our response, as we witnessed in Washington, D.C., sets up a conflict, a false conflict, between the military and civilian society. It erodes the moral ground that ensures a trusted bond between men and women in uniform and the society they are sworn to protect, and of which they themselves are a part. Well, I applaud the general in this response. Personally, again, you can agree, disagree with it. Maybe you think it's fitting for a former Secretary of Defense, for a general of the U.S. Marine Corps to come out and directly address the President of the United States, given his recent remarks. You can have that debate. We can have that debate. That's perfectly fine. But I think this was fixing, because the world is lacking leadership. It's not coming from the President of the United States. He had the opportunity of a lifetime to step up to the plate and to attempt to unite this country. He could have led a peaceful protest himself. He could have had balls of steel and walked with the protesters in a peaceful manner, arm in arm, hand in hand. I don't even care if you're wearing gloves because you're afraid of COVID-19. Whatever you want to do. Bring civil leaders, civil rights leaders to the White House. Have a discussion, have a debate. Open the Bible and read from it. Not just hold it up for a photo opportunity. Opportunity after opportunity after opportunity is presented to this president, even in the midst of chaos and crisis and confusion. And he instead wants to fan the flames, instead wants to play the politics, instead wants to use some key words that are going to trigger his base. That's not what we need. We don't need a president of the Republican Party. We need a president of the United States. That's what we need. One squandered opportunity after the next. And I don't know what the solution is when it comes to the candidates that we have, because I don't think either of them, and that of course assumes that Joe Biden gets the Democratic Party's nomination, I don't think either one of them is fit for the job. Usually you got to pick maybe between the lesser of two evils, which is never a good choice. This is a struggle. I honestly believe that this is going to be truly chaotic. No surprise, obviously, as already is how 2020 has played out thus far, from now until the election. And then whoever wins, it's going to get nasty, because we haven't even really kicked up the heat when it comes to the presidential election yet, because of so much that has taken place thus far and is continuing to take place. It'll get nasty. And again, I take no pleasure in saying this. This is just what I see. This is just what I am predicting. Because everybody is so tribal. Everybody is in their silo. So many people are fed up with Donald Trump, and yet still so many love him, think he's the best president ever. I don't know how, but they do. So this is going to be a very, very bumpy ride. It's going to be an emotional roller coaster. This country is at the tipping point on so many fronts. All it takes is a little push. It's the job of a president, it's the job of any leader to bring people together. Period. End of story. Shouldn't be that difficult. You don't excuse or justify what anybody who is doing any type of violence with the rioters. Everybody wants law and order with that respect. Everybody understands that. It's the other injustice that is being protested that needs to be dealt with. What is the solution? Where is the empathy? Where is the sympathy? Where is the shared frustration? Doesn't happen. Doesn't exist within this president, unfortunately. And General Mattis hit the nail squarely on the head. No surprise. So that is our military response. From a general of the United States Marine Corps. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Caritas. Godspeed.